In solving proportions, there's a couple different ways that you can go through and solve for a missing portion. One of them is to go through and identify what was done to the first set or the first ratio to get the second ratio. So for example, we might look at this and say, what did they do to 12 to get it to turn into 6? And if you look at that, well, let's see, 12 divided by 2 would give us 6. So the same concept can then be applied to the other part of the ratio. So we could just divide 10 by 2, or not 10, sorry, 5 by 2, and that would go ahead and give us 2.5. So here we just found out that y equals 2.5. Another method that you can use other than solving that way is what we call cross multiply and solve, or cross multiply and divide. So when we have that, I'm going to go ahead and write out our original ratio, which was 12 over 5. And then I have equal to 6 over y. And when we go through to solve this, we can use that process of cross multiply. So we're going to multiply where we have 2 diagonal. And then we're going to divide or solve in the last part. So right now, because we're just solving for a basic one variable, we're going to go ahead and use that cross multiply divide. So I'll go ahead and pull my calculator up here. So we're going to multiply where we have 2 diagonal, 6 times 5, which gives us 30. And then we're going to divide that by 12. And it should give us the same answer that we got above, and it did. So we just found out that y equals 2.5, and that was the same as what we had above. Okay, so those are the two different ways that we can go through and actually solve proportions. Sometimes it just depends on the proportion as to which one's easier to use. So the more you get used to understanding how to solve it, sometimes mentally solving, it might be easier to see what's happening to the first ratio to get that second set of numbers. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and practice another one here. So here's where I'm talking about it's more advanced. So instead of just doing whole numbers like we did in lesson 4, we're going to start working with decimal numbers. You're still going to use the same concept. Okay, we could go through and say, well, let's see, 2.4 times 3 would give us 72, so then times 3. Or the other method we can use is we can go through and do 7.2 times our bottom number over here of 1.8, and then divide by the third number of 2.4. It should give us the same number. So let's see, 7.2 times 1.8, and then we'll divide that by 2.4. And when we do that, we get 5.4 for K. We would have gotten the same thing if I would just went ahead and check this. Now that was something mentally I was able to do because I was thinking 24 and 72 and ignoring the decimals. Some people won't be able to do that. And that's where this cross multiply divide works 100% of the time. So if I just double check off of my mental calculation, 1.8 times 3 gives me still the 5.4. So we just found out that K equals 5.4. Okay, so this is just working the same concept that we did in lesson 4. It's just working with some more advanced numbers. This one, once again, is kind of like what we already did. So 9 times 3 would give us 3, or not times 3, divided by 3 would give us 3, or we can work it backwards. 3 times 3 would give us 9. So then 17 times 3 should give us the same thing. Or we can do our cross multiply divide. So let's see, if I did the cross multiply divide, it'd be 9 times 17. Divide that by 3. And when I do that, I get 51. And 17 times 3 does give me 51. Okay, so here's one where it's a little more advanced. So I'm going to go ahead and have you work through this one. You can either use your cross multiply divide, which is probably going to be easier here just because there's not an easy number. It's a decimal number that they're working with between 10 and 8. So go ahead and work through this one and then check your answer in just a minute. You should have gotten K equals 5.6 for this one. Okay. And the last one here, we've got 9/10 is equal to D over 6.4. So go ahead and solve through that one. You should have gotten 5. 5.76 on this one. D equals 5.76. So that's working with some proportions where they're just slightly a little more advanced. They're not perfect whole numbers. And using that cross multiply divide or cross multiply solve as you get older and start working with